hello. One day late, we are paying homage to this very important architect, Antoni Gaudi, who died on the 10th of June. Today is the 11th of June, so we apologize for being one day late. But we are thinking of him. We thought of him yesterday as well. And let's now begin a journey through his works, because this architect deserves to be known as well as possible. He was called the servant of God. I wonder how many architects would deserve such words, servants of God. I also wonder how many architects would sign the projects, the drawings, with the three letters SDG, with which Johann Sebastian Bach, the great German composer, signed his musical, compositions. Soli Deo Gloria, to God alone the glory. This is how Johann Sebastian Bach signed his musical notations, his compositions. And so did the great, maybe the greatest film director until now. I'm talking about Ingmar Bergman, an unbelievable Swedish film director, in my opinion, the best film director until now. He also signed his scripts, or his, how to call them, the scripts for the films with the same three initials, S, L, S, D, G, Soli Deus Gloria, only to God alone the glory. Why is it that no architect does this these days? Maybe, who knows, in the Middle Ages, maybe those beautiful anonymous builders of the Gothic cathedrals did, or maybe other great builders, let's say in Asia, the builders of the temples, or in other cultures and other religions, they did so, but not in the present. I don't think there is an architect in the present who would do something like that. To have the ambition, not an arrogant ambition, quite the opposite, a modest ambition to honor God through the magnificence of a beautiful work. And Antoni Gaudi does deserve to be called the servant of God. But I don't think there are many who deserve, and many who deserve this today. So Antoni Gaudi Cornet, that's his full name, was born on June 25th, and we are going to talk about him again on his day of birth, June 25th. He died on June 10th, 1926 in an accident. Was a Catalan architect known as the greatest exponent of Catalan modernism. Gaudi's works have a highly individualized sui generis style. Most are located in Barcelona, including his main work, the Church of the Sagrada Familia. Gaudi's work was influenced by his passions in life: architecture, nature, religion. He considered every detail of his creations and integrated into his architecture such crafts as ceramics, stained glass, wrought iron work, forging, and carpentry. He also introduced new techniques in the treatment of materials, such as trencadis, which used waste ceramic pieces. And we saw examples of this in the previous presentation. This was the man, the servant of God, a man who had great difficulties, from what I understood, in school, but it seems that exceptional creators very commonly have such difficulties. Why? Because schools are systems, and exceptional people like him, servants or God or not, are not easily accepted within the systems. Antoni Gaudi was an architect from Catalonia. This is a different, I'm not sure it's good that I read it again, but in his case, maybe it's better to repeat something twice. He belonged to Modernism, Art Nouveau movement, and was famous for his unique style and highly individualistic designs. As an architecture student at the Escola Técnica Superior de Arquitectura in Barcelona, from 1873 to 1877, Gaudi achieved only mediocre grades, but did well in his trial drawings and projects. After 5 years of work, he was awarded the title of architect in 1878. As he signed Gaudi's title, Elias Rogent, I guess, the leader of the school declared, "Who knows if we have given this diploma to a nut or to a genius? Time will tell." And time did tell. They gave the diploma to a genius, but unfortunately, they entertained the idea that he might have been a nut. The newly named architect immediately began to plan and design and remained affiliated with the school his entire life. This was generous of him. I mean, of Antoni Gaudi. Sagrada Familia, he started it in 1882 and continues the work, as you know, until now. Barcelona has to be admired for its beautiful, dedication. The whole city contributes to this building as it was done in the Middle Ages. And it's already a splendid building, but it will become probably even more so. Exactly because it is this collective work that not many buildings in today's world benefit from. So this is how the building looks like now. Some parts were built by Antoni Gaudi, and since some years ago, the city decided to so-called complete this great work that began with Antoni Gaudi. But it was started in the work in 1882, and now I'll show works that he did from 1883 onwards. El Capriccio, 1883, 1885. It's a small work, so to speak, but it's magnificent itself. Look here, the richness of the architectural expression. Yes, it's like a dream architecture. It's like a fairy tale architecture. But isn't life itself kind of like a fairy tale? I think it is, if we are only open to perceive it as such and see its beauty and see its unexpectedness, see its dream-like qualities, because life is like a dream, and great thinkers and great artists thought so. Life is a dream. If life is a dream, why can't we express this dream? And so often we are afraid to do so. Why? Antoni Gaudi, who would do something like this today, would be considered, obsolete and old-fashioned and, sentimental and naive. We prefer instead the cynicism of a gray minimalism. But maybe if we return to some kind of celebratory architecture that pays homage to life itself and to the richness of nature, we don't contemplate to go to Mars or who knows where, to leave the earth. But maybe surrounded just by gray buildings and concrete buildings and only right angles and rectangles and so on. Yes, we could imagine that it's better on Mars or Moon than on the Earth. Is it a capricious architecture? Maybe to an extent, but capriciousness is part of the artistic process. Often there are even important musical pieces called just that, you employing the same word, caprice. Even Voltaire said the superfluous is part of existence. It's part of life, and we shouldn't be afraid of what appears to be superfluous. Just in this, spire, this top part of the tower of this building, we see in a way that the tail of the peacock that John Ruskin gave us an example when he said the most beautiful things in life and in nature are those that are most useless. And it's true. So to hell with functionalism and the functionalists. They are not working for increasing the wonders of the world. They are working for decreasing the wonders of the world. You know, the magic of life. In terms of functionalism, what would be the relevance of what we look at here? Not much, really. Much of the beauty and the interest of what we look at here derives from something else, not from the stringency and the determinism of functionalism. It's like the flowering of a flower. It's like the wings of a butterfly. Why did God exhaust himself as an artist to create these unbelievable, beautiful wings of the butterfly? What is their functional reason? You know, it seems God himself was capricious, no? Beautifully so. Look at the stained glass window here. Do we still do stained glass windows? Of course not. Even if modern architects like Frank Lloyd Wright did. But are we willing to learn from Frank Lloyd Wright? Of course not. Are we willing to learn from Antoni Gaudi? Of course not. I'm not saying that we can build every building like this. This is a special building done it at a certain time in a certain place. But certain inspirations I think we can find. And the main inspiration perhaps is to try to do beautiful work. Now I understand the beauty in itself might be something subjective. Yes, what I find beautiful, someone else might think is not beautiful. But beyond the subjectivity of choices and evaluations, maybe there is some kind of a, common appraisal of what is, charged with passion, with harmony, with color, with contrast. Look at this building. Who would say that this is not a beautiful building? I think it is. And it's less known than other buildings by Antoni Gaudi, but it's a great building. And again, just like the tail of the peacock, what is happening at the corner is another example that what is truly beautiful is mostly useless. It's a paradox. It's a paradox. Yeah, but it's a paradox which the functionalist refuses to acknowledge. I was trained as a functionalist in a functionalist school, but I arrived at hating functionalism. Really, it transforms gold into mud or lead. It's look at this ceiling. You say, wait a minute, this is madness. It's madness. I don't think it's madness. Or if it is madness, it's a beautiful madness. I mean, it would have been better a flat white ceiling. Why? Because we love sterility and frigidity. That's why. No, again, of course, you cannot build some, blocks of flats for proletarians with such a ceiling. You can't. But, sometimes for a public building, perhaps, maybe we can indulge in explorations of a fantastic architecture. Antoni Gaudi. Everything is an event, an architectural event, everything. is so much richness that really puts to shame our white walls. I'm sorry. It really puts to shame our white walls. There is no glory in our white walls. Come on. Look just this corner. You know, it makes you stop and study and observe and be impressed. I went on a hill here close to where I live just 1 hour and a half ago. And, you know, there is a field with plants, you know, for agricultural reasons planted. And all of a sudden, a wild, beautiful, colored flower, which came out of the earth, is the same with this building. It's an event. You stop. I mean, if you are insensitive, maybe you don't stop. But if you are sensitive, you probably stop. Can you understand how much creativity went into this so-called detail? Do we have such a joy in our works today? Very rarely. Look how rich this building is. It's a celebration of life. That's how I see it. It's a joyous yes to life. I love this building. I'm not from Catalonia. I'm not from that time, but I love this building. It's symphonic, both inside and outside. Some people might say it's too much. I can't take this. It's too much. Yes, it's too much because we forgot passion. We are not passionate any longer. We are passionate about, I don't know what, HBO or Netflix movie, but we are not passionate about passionate architecture. Very often we are not. Episcopal Palace of Astorga. So again, what we looked at is a very early work by Antoni Gaudi. Now we move because I make a presentation in chronological order. Now 1883 to 1913, the Episcopal Palace of Astorga. So he worked for this for 30 years. This one is not really for my taste. It's a little bit too, I don't know, castle-like. It was the same man. It was Antoni Gaudi. You know, not all works have to be, pleasing to everybody. I find it a little bit almost predictable somehow. It's too much castle-like. Um, but maybe I make this statement also because I dislike, palaces in general, and maybe episcopal palaces even more. But does religion need palaces? I hope not, but I guess they do. Anyway, this one is rich too, but in a rather, I don't know. I don't find it so creative in a novel way as the previous building. It's still the work of a young Antoni Gaudi, but I do like, what I see here. This organic, convincing, solid, rigid, massive structure, just by itself almost. I think is powerful. Is it in the basement? Perhaps. Now, the Güell pavilions from 1884 to 1887. Here we see a lot of architectural embroidery. Yes, this architect was not afraid of embroidering with constructive or construction materials. And the iron, the wrought iron work of the gate is immensely impressive. But even the building, look what's going on here at the top. This is almost Asia, you know, with its horror vacui, with its you know hallucinatory richness of ornament. This is the gate. I mean, if one architect today would do just this gate would feel accomplished, would say, I express myself fully, I transgressed all limits, and I was immensely creative. But this is a small part of his work, very small part, but not a part without an impressive force. Antoni Gaudi, the servant of God. Now, I don't know about this. These are a little bit gingerbread houses for my taste. He has some moments of such architecture. But this gate is impressive indeed. And what could be the symbolism of the dragon or the animal, you know, that is so clearly defined in this gate, you know, to scare the, you know, the visitors, to, I don't know, to symbolize maybe the terrors of life, the terror of death. I don't know, but it's an incredible thing. As incredible also the culmination of this. I don't know what is this, a chimney or something, or it's just having some kind of it's a signage for the entrance into this estate. Whatever it is, the fantastic is welcomed. And you know, to talk about the fantastic today is to talk about I don't know, the non-existence of the most non-existent thing in the world, as if the world ran out of mysteries. Maybe that's why we want to go to the moon or to Mars. Palau Güell, 1885, 1890. Look at this splendid structure, and it is splendid. It is telluric. You know, it's so you know, charged with substance and heaviness. It's indeed telluric. It's heavy. It honors gravity. It's pregnant. This is a pregnant architecture in the best sense of the word. I wish such structures, and woven structures, because they are woven with bricks. You know, it's a woven pregnant column, and the entrances are themselves woven. Yes, woven. It's textile work. So much textile work here, even with ceramic tiles. It's incredible. Then look at this. It's magic. Now compare this with our works. Compare these doors with our doors. Compare these walls with our walls. You can't, because we totally banished ornament. The interior is also, you know, surprising, to say the least. And these are lesser known works by Antoni Gaudi. And look here. Look at the brickwork. Everything is an event. The servant of God. Again, compare this, please, with our white flat ceilings. This is a celebration of life and a celebration of the cosmos, while our flat white ceilings celebrate nothing except maybe efficiency and boredom, and lack of imagination, of course. Look at the doors. Look at everything, actually, with the exception of this blank wall on the. Probably it was meant to have another building immediately built near, and it didn't happen. But whatever. Otherwise, the building has an almost, unacceptable richness. And yes, I do love this basement. I guess it is a basement, but it's sublime. It's convincing structurally, and yet it's beautiful aesthetically. He was a great master. Theresian College, 1888, 1889. He was able to work also with rhythm, with regularity, with repetition. Yes, he did. But even here, look at the brickwork, which is not hidden. The great architects never tried to hide the brickwork. Bricks are beautiful if they are allowed to express themselves honestly, and to show how they are put together, how they come together, how they are woven together. And they are woven together magnificently. It's a great lesson of architecture in architecture, and he was not mad. I mean, you see a lot of logic here in the structures of Antoni Gaudi. These are not fantasies of a madman who didn't know what he was doing. No, no. You see, there is reason as well. But there is reason, but there is also the splendor of and the attraction of what we call the fantastic. He built a lot. I mean, not just those few works that everybody knows. As you can see, these are works that I show exactly because they are important and they are less known. But his oeuvre is so large, and he experimented with many things. You see here, do we do this sort of thing just to transform a brick column into what we see here? Very rarely we take care of something like this. No, the banality of our columns is alarming. We just have a round column, the same from the bottom to the top, which reaches a horizontal slab, and that's it. But here is about something else. It's about negotiating between the vertical and what was to come, the horizontal, with a transitional phase, which is dramatic, sculpturally, plastically interesting. Even at the top, do we think of doing something like this at the top of our buildings? Of course not. We only have a horizontal slab, the terrace jardin or without any jardin, and that's it. We don't care about the coiffure of the building most of the time. Casa Botines, I don't know if I pronounce well, 1891. Now, this part of his work I'm not so fond of, which is, castle-like. It's a little bit, for me, I am talking about myself. But but I appreciate the presence of statues on the elevation of the building, something we don't do. Of course not. Why should we bring sculpture to our buildings, right? Why should we associate ourselves with the painter and the sculptor? No way. Franciscan missions in Tangier. It was not built. 1892, I just see a project here. Bodegas Güell, 1895, 1897. So we are still at the end of the 19th century. Here we have stonework, but as imaginatively done as some of the brickworks that we saw earlier. he didn't work alone, and I hope I have in this presentation also the work presented the work of one of his closest collaborators, who worked kind of in a similar way, but still with his own personality. We'll arrive there, I hope. He was probably, I mean, I know unhappiness is, for all of us human beings on this earth. But I like to imagine that Antoni Gaudi was a happy architect, being able to build in such an imaginative way and so many buildings. Casa Calvet, 1898, 1900. I wonder what Antoni Gaudi would have thought of minimalism. He probably would not have believed it. He probably would not have imagined it. What do you mean minimalism? But what is strange, even one of the most important minimalists of our time, John Pawson, is becoming a maximalist. I just a few days ago I discovered the material about him, turning from being a minimalist, a maximalist. Not in a very convincing way, unfortunately, but John Pawson is a very important minimalist architect, although Riba doesn't consider him an architect because, I don't know, he missed a diploma or something. But please check his work out. It's excellent. John Pawson, Pawson. Bellsgard, 1900-1909. Another building by the irrepressible Antoni Gaudi. And look again at, when I see this structure which wants to flourish like a flower does in the spring, I tremble with joy because the structure wants to become ornament. That's what we look at here. The structure wants to become ornament. I like more what's happening in the basement or the lower levels of the building than the rest. But on the other hand, even these stained glass windows, they are amazing because they are so other than what we do. We don't even think of creating windows in using color and so on. No, no. Bagwell, of course, this is a very well-known work, 1900, 1914, so about 120 years ago, and flooded with tourists, of course, because, a significant piece of architecture attracts a lot of people. Unafraid to assume the animal world and add it to the work of man, meaning the work of architecture. he wanted sometimes, like in this case, to bring architecture closer to nature. And since nature doesn't use a T-square and a rectangle, he did what he did. Parguel, Antoni Gaudi. Barcelona. Barcelona, which has other very important architects and had very important architects and will have very important architects and still invites architects from other countries, important architects to build in the city. Bravo to them. Now, sometimes his architecture appears to be a little bit burlesque, but it is so exactly because he probably would have liked his columns to become trees, to grow towards light, to become green in the spring. Although he has other kinds of columns like these, which are very, architectonic, so to speak. But compare, please, these columns with these ones. But these are columns which do not support anything, except perhaps the sky. Here they do support, the slab above. Parguel, Antoni Gaudi, the servant of God. Again, here the columns do support structurally, but they are so different from these columns. So he was able to work actually in two different ways. Here with vertical columns, in a way tamed columns, although impressive in their own way, and then these columns, which are slanted. Look at them. Artigas Gardens, 1905-1906, a lesser known work by him. The rusticity of this architecture is appropriate for this function within the park. Everything is animated. Is again, I think he would have, for him, it would have been completely incomprehensible much of our architecture today. In an interesting way, this architecture by the educated Antoni Gaudi reminds one of the architecture of uneducated architects, like Cheval in France, and others who, so-called naive architects who never studied architecture and who built in a very similar way with Antoni Gaudi in this case. Casa Mila, one of his masterpieces, one of his best known works, 1905, 1907. The chimneys on the terrace are incredible, and of course not just them, but I was on the roof of this building and I know what I'm saying is, I mean, look at this doorway, why didn't he just make a rectangular door? Why did he complicate himself? Why is it woven like this? Why is it like a spider's web? Why? Maybe he wanted to represent the labyrinth of existence, the labyrinth of life. And he worked here without parametry and without the tools that we have at our disposal today. But on the other hand, he benefited from great craftsmen. He probably didn't draw everything, he just suggested a way of building something, and the people and the draftspersons in his office produce the works. Look at the parapet of these balconies. Can you imagine something like this today? Even if we can imagine, who would build it? He had a great collaborator who actually worked on these parapets, Pujol or Jujol. I am not sure I pronounce well his name, because the problem is Catalonia has its own way of pronouncing. It's not really, like in Spain. So it's either Jujol or Jujol, Jujol, a very important architect himself who worked together with Antoni Gaudi. And look, we are on the roof. Now compare, please, this, but I can't even call it roof, really. It's in itself a new ground on which or from which, I mean, in comparison with this, even what Le Corbusier did at l'unité d'habitation in Marseille appears to be tamed and low-key and timid. Why did he do it in this way? Well, chimneys are actually, expressing fire, no? And fire, Heraclitus thought that was the father of all things. It gave birth to, it was even prior to God, Heraclitus thought. So how do we honor fire and what it expresses through architecture? This is one way. There are other ways. I remember the chimneys at Chambord, which was built by the king Francois Ier. Another beautiful example that people didn't consider it just an evacuation channel for the fume. No, it's much more than this. It's the pathos of fire, the immense significance of fire, which could be expressed through the chimney that was built on top of the building to, channel, the fume. Yes, but it's not just that. So, it's amazing what Antoni Gaudi did here, together with his collaborators. Absolutely amazing. We don't even think about such matters any longer. For us, fire is only something that to be afraid of, and call the fireman to tell us what the rules and regulations are about how to handle fire. We don't think about the symbolism of fire, the metaphors of fire, the incredible history and meaning of fire. No, we don't. We are sterile in our rationalism and our, timidities. There are in the evening gatherings there, people playing the guitar, reciting poems, and you can see Barcelona from above, and it's magnificent. Again, it's about the joy of being alive and the joy of creating and not being afraid of monumentality and sculpture and art, in essence. That is expression. Compare, please, these buildings across the street with this one. Which ones, which is richer? Casa Batlló, another important building by him, 1905, 1907. Look at the ceiling. It is a tornado, a vortex. Look at the tiles of the roof. It's like the skin of a magical snake. It's not afraid even of the violence of color. Blue ceramic tiles like we see them here. It's the south of Spain. No, it's close to the Mediterranean Sea. Casa Batlló. The interior is more tamed, as you can see, but it's still interesting. At the top, that is, because on the ground floor, you saw it's still Antoni Gaudi with his usual verb. Why do tourists flock there? Because they are attracted by the unusual architecture. That's why. Now you will see now a project he did for Manhattan, for the United States, and it was not built. Hotel attraction, and it was not built, but if it was built, probably would have been the talk of the town, if not the whole world. Sagrada Familia Schools, 1909. And so unfortunately, I only have one image here. I should have had a few more. Sorry about this. The Park Güell again. We saw this picture already. Church of Colonia Güell, 1908, 1914. I love this work, which was unfortunately not accomplished. He only built what you see here in colors at the bottom, but he intended it to be built all the way like this. But just this part that he built is very, very impressive. I consider it one of his most important works. So it's the church at the Colonia Güell, 1908, 1904. A church that was not finalized, but what was built is amazing, and you are going to see it. Look at the structure here. Now, again and again, if we compare our sterile, predictable, banal, frigid columns with this, there is no way we can say we are proud of what we did. No, it's impossible. only not only that this column is slanted, but it's also twisted. Why did he did it so? And this is different from all the others. It doesn't repeat. It's not a column that repeats itself several times. Each one is different. Beautiful work. Really, this puts to shame a lot of architectural projects done in certain schools of architecture. And also, of course, a lot of architecture that is built. Look at this. It's like we are in the womb of some kind of magical architectonic organism. Look at the columns, look at the ceiling. Its organic architecture is very different from the architecture, the organic architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright. This is Antoni Gaudi, in my opinion, at his best. Look at this. I think it's magical. How did he draw it? I mean, how did he make the project? It's halfway between architecture and nature, between culture and nature. The servant of God, Antoni Gaudi. He died on the 10th of June. And you can only imagine how the building would have been if it was, you know, closer to completion. But it was not. But even so, at this level, it's a lesson in architecture, in life, in creativity, in the joy of, you know, discovering things. It's very beautiful, I think. And you see, it's the Crypta Gaudi, because that's what it is. It's part of the world, you know, heritage, and with good reason. Is it logical? Yes, it is. Is it illogical? Yes, it is. It's both rational and irrational, just as it should be, because that's how life is. It's both rational and irrational. Who would say that this is not a rational structure? In my opinion, it's more rational than our rationalistic structures. But it's alive, it's dynamic, it's organic. I mean, what could words mean when you look at this picture? They have to be very inspired. They have to be the words of a poet. Otherwise, better be silent. this is what he envisioned, but it was built just the bottom. Great drawings too, and great structural studies, which he employed also Sagrada Familia. And look at the plan, it's like a womb, an enchanting womb. Casamila again. He was certainly not afraid of movement. He was not afraid of the dynamics of life. He was not afraid of the dynamics of nature. He was not afraid to dream and to act upon his dreams. As Faulkner said, you know, the great North American writer, always dream. But it's not enough to dream. It's also important to act upon your dreams, because there are dreamers, ineffectual people who just dream. It's not enough. Dream, but also try to implement the dreams. And that's what Antoni Gaudi did. Look at the ceiling here. Why did he complicate himself? Why does the ocean complicate itself? Or why does the volcano complicate itself? Or why does the wind complicate itself? Why do the clouds complicate themselves when they fly magnificently above us? Why did God complicate himself? You know, was it Nietzsche who said, you know, when God created the woman, or when he created Eve, he made the second mistake? And we know which was the first mistake, of course, Adam. Anyway, Sagrada Familia, the sacred family, the building which still grows, because the whole city is determined to have it grow. And this is beautiful. I mean, it really moves me. The architect planted the seed, well, more than a seed. He started the construction of this cathedral. And now, you know, years later, more than 100 years later, here we have the city investing all its creative power, its financial prowess, the talent of everybody, artists and so on, to develop this building that came from the impulse of Antoni Gaudi. And they didn't try to mimic, they don't try to mimic identically what Gaudi left to us. There are expressions of our own time, but respecting at the same time what Antoni Gaudi did. So there is both continuity and invention, and it's a work in progress still. But it's I think Barcelona gives us a lesson in civic pride and in civic devotion to a great project, and they can only be admired for this. Barcelona is truly giving an example which in the Middle Ages, for example, was given by other places, but in modern times, very rarely we see this collective effort, to continue the legacy of a great architect born there, and to honor what we call God in a most splendid way. Bravo to Antoni Gaudi. What we see here with the color is his work, and then what we see behind or without color is what Barcelona is attempting to build, and it does with efforts, with sometimes with failures, but all in all, it's very moving, this will of a city to have this building grow. The whole city somehow comes together in this project. And look at the forest of columns. Look at this. These are done in our times. This was not done by Antoni Gaudi. It's magical. And look at the people, gathered, underneath the canopy of these columns, great columns. A great effort and a very inspiring effort. So this meeting between the past and the present and the future is the most we can aspire towards. We are less alone. Look at the splendid ceiling of Sagrada Familia that was done now. I mean, in the present. And sculptures, statues that adorn the newer parts of the cathedral. It's a great work. And it's great, even more, it's even more great, it's even greater because it became a collective work. Gaudi was not left alone. This was not done by him. This was done in recent times. It's Sagrada Familia is the flowering of Barcelona. Stonework. And now, yes, it is. This was supposed to be a presentation about Antoni Gaudi, but I take the occasion to also talk about this collaborator he had, this remarkable architect, Josep Maria Jujol. If I pronounce well in Catalan, I'm not sure, and if I don't, I apologize. 1879, 1949. So he died at 70. Let's see a few works by him. So he was a well-known collaborator of Antoni Gaudi, and he did some important parts of the works that Gaudi did, but he also worked alone, and we are going to see them. So Josep Maria Jujol, here is a picture of him. So again, with all his greatness, Antoni Gaudi didn't work alone. And it's important to say this. And Jujol was indeed one of the important collaborators, and he had others, but I know of him. Apparently, he did these, intricate wrought iron works. And this is his own work in a building that he designed himself. Look at the parapet of the stair. This is a book on him. I have one of his books too, or one of the books on him. I admire Jujol very much, and he in a way, he had the disadvantage of living and working in the shadow of Antoni Gaudi, but this church he built by himself, and I think is a remarkable architecture itself. It's a small church, but it's not small in terms of quality at all. It's a beautiful church that Jujol built. And this is another one, also by Jujol. So again, Gaudi was not alone. There were other architects around him or distance from him who worked, who did themselves interesting works. So this is one of the two churches that he built by himself. Architecture of Gaudi and Jujol. This is an apartment building he built in the corner of a street. I think it's actually facing the Avenue Diagonal in Barcelona. It wasn't built quite as he designed it, but in good measure, perhaps can be evaluated as his work. And there is modernity here too. Maybe to an extent even more than in the case of Antoni Gaudi. He was a different architect. They collaborated, but he had his own personality. And I think this is shown in this small corner building that he built in Barcelona. Another house built by Jujol, maybe a little bit too picturesque, but still, I would say, interesting. That's it. So that was the presentation about Antoni Gaudi today. Thank you for being here today.